Hey, how's it going? My name is Andy Monroe, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, you can see I'm going to be talking about how to plan an event in 2024. This is essentially just going to be an overview of my system, formula, philosophy, checklist, strategy, whatever you want to call it, about event management. And it's the exact system I've used to plan all of my events, anywhere from 12 to 15 attendees, all the way up to 2,000 plus attendees. So it's worked really well for me. And I'm going to be rocking with this Loom video setup again. I kind of like it. I do enjoy making those really nice looking videos with like the Sony camera, making sure the lighting's perfect. But it is also nice just to create a simple presentation deck, turn on Loom, and just kind of freestyle a little bit more authentic. So I'm just going to be freestyling, and hopefully I can do it all in one take. It's always fun when you don't have to edit a video. So before we go any further, I want to kind of talk to you about why you should consider listening to me. You don't have to. Even after I read you this stuff, you can still, click out of the video. We all got free will, don't we? But so I've been working in the events industry for the last 4 years. And from the events that I have planned and managed and coordinated, whatever word you want to use, they have generated millions of dollars in revenue, and that is revenue from ticket sales to the events, and also revenue that was generated at the events themselves with different products, services, and offers. And also over the last 4 years, I was able to help an online coaching business scale from $0 to $25 million. I was involved in planning all of their events, and I was also a partner at that company. So it was really fun to grow and scale. And now I currently run a business where I'm dedicated to helping community owners, coaches, course creators, and just other business owners leverage the power of events to scale, to create community, to decrease churn, to make noise in their industry, whatever the need is. Events can do it. So that's a little bit about myself. If that any of that information, changes your mind if you want to watch or not watch, then that's awesome. But figured I'd share a little bit. And then a little disclaimer, there's no one right way to plan an event. And I would highly suggest not listening to anyone that says there is one right way to plan an event. The stuff I'm going to be talking about in this video is just what works for me. This is how I plan my events. This is my experience. It might not work for you. It might work great for you. Who knows? But just take it with a grain of salt and make sure you just try it out and iterate it to work for your business, for your situation, for your events, because every single event, every single business is not copy and paste. There's lots of variables that I just don't know about when it comes to your business. So I'm just going to share my experience, and hopefully there's some stuff in here that can help you out with your events. So now that that's out of the way, let's actually dive into the meat, the sauce of the video. So the first thing I want to talk about is phase number one. Last thing, I keep saying this, but last thing I'll say before I dive in, the one thing that's very subjective in this entire process is this timeline up here. So right here, I say 16 to 18 months out. This is when I'm planning like a massive conference. I'm talking 1,000, 2,000 people. I like to get started, 16 to 18 months out, so I can ensure a healthy timeline. But if you're planning a 100 person event or a 50 person event, you definitely don't need to plan it out, 16 to 18 months out. You'll be way ahead of the curve. It's just not necessary. So just make sure that you're, not taking every single thing I say literally. This might not be the exact timeline you need to follow. It's just kind of there for reference to demonstrate how the phases work into each other. So I think that's obvious, but I just figured I'd say it. All right, so let's dive in. The North Star. So I call phase one the North Star because this is essentially going to lay the foundation. It's going to be kind of pretty much the phase that is acting as your North Star, your guiding North Star through the entire event planning process. The stuff that you determine in this phase is going to help you and guide you through the rest of the planning process. So at first, it's determining the objective of the event. So this is honestly something I think a lot of planners and events miss, is they just plan their event without a real objective. It's like, what are you trying to get out of this event, and what are you trying to deliver to your attendees? There should be a very clear objective for the event, even if it's just an after party or a concert, whatever it is you're planning. What's the objective? What are you trying to accomplish with this event? And you should also recognize the problem you are solving. Pretty much every event should be solving a problem for their attendees. Like, what is that problem you are solving? In this phase, we design the frame, so the frame of mind that attendees will be entering into the event with, which is very important. And we also determine the vehicle during this phase. So when I say the vehicle, it's like, what is, first we're going to go back to recognizing the problem you're solving, the vehicle is going to be the thing that is solving that problem. So an example I'm going to use for a conference I've thrown for a number of years, it's called Fund Launch Live. We are teaching people how to launch and scale investment funds at that conference. So the problem we are solving is people not knowing how to start an investment fund, or they have just started an investment fund and they don't know how to scale and grow it. And the vehicle that we are going to be solving the problem with is funds. So just it's very good to have a clear idea of what your vehicle is and how you're going to be solving your attendee's problem. Then this is also very important. I'd say everything in here is very important, but identifying the false beliefs that your attendee has about your vehicle, their internal false beliefs and their external false beliefs. So false beliefs about the vehicle, what do they believe about your offer, your way of solving their problem? Like, what do they think invalidates it and makes it, not the best option for them? So going back to the, Fund Launch Live example, a lot of false beliefs about the fund vehicle is that funds are too complicated to set up, or that everyone who runs a fund is a fraud or a scammer, or you have to be really rich to run a fund. Those are some false beliefs about the vehicle. And identifying internal false beliefs. So what false beliefs does your attendee hold internally that's holding them back that you need to deconstruct through your event? Using the same example, a lot of internal false beliefs about funds is that, I can't raise capital, or I don't have enough experience to go out and launch a fund. Let's see if I can think of another one off the top of my head. Even the money thing could be an internal false belief as well. Like, I don't have enough money to go out and start a fund. These are all internal false beliefs. Then finally, external false beliefs. So what false beliefs do your attendees have about the world around them that's holding them back? An example of this for funds is like, the economy is too crazy right now, or the election is coming up and it's just not a good time to start a fund. When you're throwing at least the way that we view it, when we are throwing an event, and it's very important in order to get them from an attendee to a purchaser, or even just to deliver the best experience possible for them. It's important to deconstruct those false beliefs so they can reduce their friction as they are going through whatever process it is. For Fund Launch Live, it's them launching and scaling a fund. Breaking down these false beliefs almost like adds lubricant to their process of launching and scaling a fund. All of these false beliefs kind of act as friction in their entire process. So then the last two things of phase one, which are kind of optional, is determining a key framework. I like to have a key framework at an event. It makes it very simple and easy to digest for the attendee, and also to determine the offer and monetization strategy of the event, which you don't need to have. Some events just provide 100% value, no offer, no pitch, no monetization strategy, all with the hopes of just delivering a lot of value, and they'll retain these leads, and they'll eventually do business together in the future. So this is optional, it's up to you. However, if you are going to have an offer, if you are going to pitch, or if you are going to monetize your event, I definitely suggest at least having an idea of that during phase one, so that you're not surprised or scrambling towards the end to get that all set up. So moving on to phase number 2, which I like to call the foundation. During this time, this is when we kind of select the event type. Now that we've determined all the stuff from phase 1, the objective, the false beliefs, like what the problem is we're solving, we can kind of decide if we want it to be a public event or a private event, meaning are we going to sell tickets to it, or is it going to be a fulfillment event on the back end for our pre-existing customers? Also, do we want it to be in person or virtual? So I think both event types are great options. There's been a lot of success with virtual events. There's a lot of success with in-person events. My opinion is that virtual events will never be able to replicate the magic and the beauty and the experience of an in-person event. Humans have this innate desire to connect and be in the room with somebody. I simply just don't attend virtual events because I get bored. I'm on my computer, on school.com or watching other YouTube videos, whatever it is, just kind of distracted on the side. So I definitely advocate for in-person events. That being said, I know virtual events can be powerful as well. During this period, we also determine our KPIs for the event. So how are we going to measure if the event was a failure or a success? We establish our event budget. We establish the attendee goal. And then once we do these things, especially the budget should be one of the first things, or at least for us, it's one of the first things that we do during phase 2. Just because when you're down here and you're looking at location, your event date, your food and beverage, looking at venues and stuff, it's good to have the budget established so that you can work with these venues and not put yourself in a situation where you're spending way too much money, or you're spending, half of your budget on the venue and the food and beverage, so that you're, really trying to be frugal with all the other aspects of the event. So I like to have the event budget established at the beginning of the foundation phase, usually around, 15 to 16 months out, and the rest of the stuff can fall under. So location finalized, event date finalized, food and beverage minimum finalized, review contracts with legal team. I've been actually using ChatGPT to review contracts lately as well. That's been working for me. Event venue finalized, and finally you can announce your event to the public. All right, now we're moving on to phase number 3. So this is 6 to 12 months out from the event. And this is probably the biggest phase in terms of time that's inside of the phase. We're talking 6 months here, so a lot of stuff can happen in 6 months. One thing we do in this phase is we finalize our event marketing plan, and we also finalize the website and the funnel that we're going to be using for the event if we're going to be selling tickets to it. Especially, this is when the event logo is finalized. This is when the headline speaker and the talent is being booked. Ideally, we actually have a few speakers booked when we announce the event. That's why it's not all black and white. Sometimes you can kind of stray from these phases, but it's nice to have like a few speakers associated with the event when you announce it, just so you can, get some early momentum in ticket sales if you're going to be selling tickets to the event. Up next, if you want to, work with another event coordinator, I would recommend having them hired as early as possible. This is also when you want to book your MC. This doesn't have to be as far out, but we have an MC that we like to use for all of our events, and he's very exclusive and hard to get. So we kind of have to book him a year out if we want to use him. So that's why I have this in this phase. And then at this point, we start to plan the after party or other internal events that are going to be going on inside of our main event. We begin sending emails to our attendees, establishing a relationship with them early on, just so they know, they trust us and they understand what all of the variables and all the information is. One of the worst ways to, I guess one of the best ways to decrease the experience of decrease the experience of the attendee at your event is to just ghost them up until the event. And they just have no idea what to expect. I've been on that side of stuff, and I've also done that to my attendees in the past as well, and they just don't appreciate it. So I've definitely learned to communicate with them as much as possible up front. And then if you're going to have a room block, this is when I would recommend sending that link out just so you can give yourself plenty of time to fulfill that room block. One of the worst things of planning an event is when you fail to fulfill a room block and you have to pay that attrition. It's pretty messy, and it's just not fun wiring over, X amount of dollars to a venue. And then if you're going to be collecting RSVPs for an event, this is a good time to start doing that. So I have right here, do a site visit. Some people, in fact, a lot of people would recommend doing site visits before you even select a venue, which I've done before. However, I've also done a lot of like post venue selection site visits, just because venues have gotten so good with like virtual tours these days. I usually have a good idea of what the venue looks like before I even visit it. And then once I book the venue, that's when I go and do a site visit so I can see the space, see the atmosphere. Regardless if you do it before or after you book the venue, I'd highly recommend getting out there and seeing the venue just so you know how to create the best experience possible for your attendees. At this point, we start to do the insurance process, making sure that we're well covered. I've communicating with attendees here twice, which means it's very important. And then this is where I like to reserve dates for partners and contractors I'll be using. So this is audio visual, this is security, this is registration. If I'm going to be having employees work at the event, maybe if it's like performers, whatever it is, if I'm going to be working with any contractors, I like to have them reserved and booked out during this phase, just so I don't have to stress about it as I get closer to the event. All right, during the next phase, I didn't have the phase on there. So this is phase 4, the design. This is 2 to 6 months out from the event. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff in here, so I'll kind of go through it, fast at a high level. But this is when, if I'm going to be having merchandise, this is when we're finalizing merchandise designs. This is when we're getting samples ordered to make sure that it's high quality and to make sure that the designs look good on the actual clothes that we're printing. This is when we're getting deadlines from AV team and also any other contractors we're working with. And this is when we are getting branding designs finalized. And this is, branding that we're going to be bringing to the event and also branding that is going to be put up by the venue. In the past, I've done exclusively branding that I have brought to events, but I've also done exclusively branding that the venue puts up, and they both work well. The venue typically is a little bit more expensive than if you were to just bring in your own branding, at least from my experience. So, it's I can't really recommend one being better than the other. So, for a lot of events, we do both. And then then we're going to order some necessary samples if we need to, just make sure everything looks good. And this is when we're also designing and hopefully ordering at least samples of tangible assets that we're going to be handing out at the event. So this is handouts, pamphlets, order forms, whatever it is. And then we're going to have a rough draft of the itinerary finished so that we can send this out and communicate this to the attendees so they can expect, what the event's going to look like over the next couple of days. And then we're going to be booking our hotel rooms for staff, for speakers, just to make sure that there's plenty of room there. And we're not, I've had a few times where I've been late to the party of booking hotel rooms for staff and for speakers, and there's no more rooms left at the hotel, so you kind of have to scramble, book nearby hotels, or you have to like move staff around, or make people stay together when they didn't want to stay together. So I'd recommend just getting that done as early as possible. And this is when I'm finalizing all of the internal events that are going to be going on at the main event. Most of the food and beverage will be finalized at this time. And this is when we're really going to start diving into the attendee experience. What do they see when they walk through the entire event? What do they see when they go to registration? Is it easy for them to find the main general session? Is it easy for them to find the bathrooms? Is it easy to find, networking areas, food, water, coffee, whatever it is? Just really putting ourselves in the perspective of the attendee and making sure that we're, giving the experience of that attendee enough time just to make it a great experience for them. And then this is when we're also designing the speaker experience, including the green room. How are we going to be communicating with speakers on site? Are we going to be picking them up? Are they going to be showing up to the venue? That's when we start to dive into that stuff. And then this is when we send out the first draft agenda, like I said. Now, moving on to phase 5, this is the final lap before the event. So we're talking 1 to 8 weeks out. This is when we're getting merchandise ordered, branding ordered, necessary branding submitted to the venue. All tangible assets are getting ordered during this phase if they have not already been ordered. Like I said, it's not all black and white. Stuff can happen, stuff in phase 5 can happen in phase 4. Stuff in phase 4 can happen in phase 5. This is kind of just like a general outline that I follow. So ideally, I like to have all my stuff ordered as early as possible. And I say it usually falls in this final lap, usually around the 7 or 8 weeks out mark. All event partners and contractors are finalized. Food and beverage is finalized. Food and beverage info and plans are submitted to the venue. And this is when I'm hiring any, external labor that I need at the event. So if I need someone to like watch doors, or I need someone to help with registration, if I just need to hire like kind of just day by day labor, this is usually when I'll do that. This is when the waiver for the event is finalized. So at your guys' events, I would highly recommend having a waiver just to protect yourself. You'll have insurance as well, but it's good just to have a waiver in place just for an extra layer of protection. The speaker lineup is being finalized. The internal team jobs are being finalized. And then typically at this time, we have an all hands meeting with the entire team that's going to be working the event and just kind of go through the entire schedule, go through expectations, all that good stuff, answer any questions that they have. I'm going to be ordering Wi-Fi. The sales plan is finalized. So this is what I talked about way back in phase 2 or phase 1, even having, a monetization strategy and an offer set in place. So throughout the entire event planning process, we are getting this, finalized. It usually changes a lot. And by the time we are in this final lap, that's when it should be ultimately finalized so that we're not, scrambling at the end to have a clear process in place. The survey implementation plan is finalized. Any rental cars, transportation is booked for team member speakers. Insurance is finalized for both the main event and sub events. Sometimes you need insurance for, if you're doing an after party, the venue might require you to have insurance for that as well. So just make sure you're covered there. Green room plan is finalized for speakers. Merch booth plan is finalized. We're sending out all necessary information to attendees that they need to know for registration. Final agenda is being sent out. We're delivering final assets to our audio-visual teams. And finally, the survey is created. So that is most of the stuff that goes down in phase 5. Then phase 6, this is the actual event itself. It's impossible to capture everything that goes on in the event, in a simple slide deck, but these are just a few bullet points. All shopping and miscellaneous lists are finalized. So usually what we do is when we have a shopping list, I'll usually wait until I'm at the event, the day before to go out and buy everything. Just so I wait until the absolute last minute, just so we can account for everything we need. It's kind of the worst when you do all your shopping and then you realize you forgot something and you have to go back like 3 or 4 times before the event even starts. So I usually like to do that on the day before the event. Team huddle every morning and night of the event. I like to do this just to make sure the entire team is on the same page. And then finally, at the event, we're going to be collecting survey data as well. And then the afterglow. This is arguably one of the most important parts of the event planning process, at least in my opinion, based on my experience. This happens 0 to 14 days after the event, and this is when you are analyzing all the survey results from the attendees. This is when you create a survey result report, just so you can, clearly look at it and analyze if people enjoyed the event or they did not enjoy the event. I like to have an all hands meeting with the team that ran the event, just so that we can debrief everything. And your team has a very unique perspective on the event. So when you're the manager and the coordinator, you kind of have a holistic perspective on the event. But your team members, someone's running merchandise, they have a very good perspective on how merchandise ran, or somebody's running registration, they have a very dialed in perspective on how registration went. So I like to have a meeting at the end just to debrief the entire event and get as much feedback as possible. I like to get a final attendee count to see how many people attended the event, get final numbers for revenue generated at the event, get final numbers for the total event cost, just so we can see our ROI. And then finally, we're going to determine if the event was successful or not. And this is based on the KPIs that are established way back in, I believe, phase 2 or phase 1 or whatever it is. So that is the entire event planning process. One thing I'll say, I think I hinted at this at some point during the video, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on during the planning of an event, and events are very dynamic, so there's probably a lot of stuff that wasn't included in here. But like I said, this is just a general guide and a checklist that I follow when I'm planning an event. And if something unique pops up during a specific event, I'll just add that into its designated phase, whatever it is. But this is the 7-phase process I use for planning all of my events, and it's worked out pretty well for me. What I do is I use Monday.com. If you're not familiar with it, it's a project management software, and I'll go in and I'll plug all of this stuff into Monday.com. It's very simple to follow. You can even assign due dates to it, so you can see when specific things are due. You can assign team members. You can leave comments. You can mark stuff as working on it or done. I love it. It's an amazing software. So I would highly recommend using either Monday.com or something like Monday.com to manage your events. I see a lot of people using Google Sheets to manage an event, and I don't love that. It's easy to lose everything. It's hard to keep track of. And also with Monday.com, you can share it with all your team members, so everyone knows where to go and that knows how to access, all the action items. So I would highly recommend using some sort of project management software to manage your events, to make sure nothing falls through the cracks. But I think that's about everything that I have for this video. That's my high level overview of my philosophy and strategy for event management and planning an event. Hopefully something in here was helpful. And like I said, there's not a black and white way to plan an event. Some of this stuff might work for you, some of it might not. But I encourage you to at least give it a try to see if it helps you out at all. And if you are a coach, course creator, community owner, or just a business owner who's looking to, strengthen your community, increase revenue, decrease churn with events, there's going to be a link for you down below. I have a free community for you. We're just talking about events. There's a lot of coaches and community owners in there that are all using events to grow their businesses as well. So it's fun to network with like-minded people. And additionally, if you're just an event planner, manager, or coordinator who's looking to connect with other people that are in the industry, other event professionals, there's also a link down there for you. I am the co-founder of the Event Creator Network, which is just a community of event planners, managers, and coordinators that are talking about events, talking about the events industry, talking about what's working for them. I have a course in there. I share a lot of resources, and it's just a fun place to exist if you're in the events industry. So feel free to check out those 2 links down below in the description. And I think that's about it. Did that in one take. Hopefully it wasn't too choppy and rusty. I would love to hear any feedback or any questions you guys have down in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks.